This episode of Archispeak is brought to you by Arcat. What's the one thing we all do in our practice? Search the internet for content, right? Well, we wanted to let you know about Arcat.com. Arcat is an online resource devoted to bringing content to the building professional. They have huge libraries you can access, and they don't hit you up for subscriptions. There are no fees, and they won't make you register to download content. We've all been there. You finally find the right file, and you get blocked with a registration pop-up, and you think, thanks for wasting my time, I'll find it somewhere else. Arcat's BIM library is really second to none and available in just about any format you need. In fact, their entire BIM library is formatted to the last 5 versions of Revit. Their CAD detail library has thousands of CAD details, and if you need specs, the Arcat library is the most consistent library you'll find. Every single spec is written in the CSI 3-part format. There's so much more on their site, including catalogs, videos, and a spec wizard. Go to arcat.com or download their app to check it out. It's a great free resource, and you don't have to register to use. Check it out today at arcat.com, arcat.com, and don't forget to provide feedback on their site. There's a button on the right-hand side of every page. Have a suggestion to make Arcat better? Click the feedback button and let them know, and tell them that Archispeak sent you. Thanks, Arcat, for sponsoring this episode of Archispeak. We're also sponsored by HMC Architects. Let's give them a listen.
Imagine a world where you can explore buildings around the globe, including ones that don't yet exist. A world where you can walk the edges of an under-construction high school in Los Angeles, then toggle over to the emergency department of a new hospital in China. Hi, I'm Chris Grant, Creative Director at HMC Architects. We're using virtual reality as a design tool that allows us to explore architecture in an immersive way from within. From this vantage point, we can experience a project as if it was built years in advance, improving collaboration and appreciating the full scale of architecture. In VR, our clients can step inside their project and feel as though they can sit on furniture or reach out and grab a handrail. This allows them to react to design decisions as if they were there, driving new questions and decision-making opportunities from within the virtual space. At HMC Architects, we believe that operating as a tech company will not only benefit our clients, but also shape our world and enrich people's lives. To learn more or become part of our story, visit hmcarchitects.com.
Welcome to Archispeak, the podcast that talks about what it's like to work in the profession of architecture.
Welcome to episode 119 of the Archispeak podcast. I'm Neil Pan.
I'm Evan Troxel.
And I'm Cormac Phelan.
Hey, this episode, we left off on the last one on 118 with the cliffhanger episode, as we call it around these parts, where Cormac was just leaving for a family trip to Bear Run, Pennsylvania, see Fallingwater. And so this one we wanted to pick it right up, and Cormac's back. He made it back alive, the whole family. And so
totally.
let's hear about your guys' experience. And I'm actually kind of interested in, I know you've been there before, but it was the first time for your family, right?
Yeah.
So I bet that it's kind of fun to see how other people experience it kind of through their eyes, and maybe some different stories that you have based on their first visit.
Sure. So ever since we moved to Maryland, to the DC area, we're really kind of day trippers, and this is just one of those many kind of, I don't know if I said it on our last episode. You know, my wife texted me and she goes, I think I want to go to Fallingwater this weekend. Mm-hmm. And so I text her back, and our tour starts at 3:45. So it
took a lot of convincing
it really didn't take any convincing at all. And I was just like, I'm game. And then she texts me back, isn't it kind of expensive? And I'm like, too late now.
Too late.
Isn't it kind of far?
Yeah. Isn't it kind of far? Isn't it kind of expensive? The cool thing is it's exactly 3-hour drive into the mountains, into the foothills of the Appalachians, driving across the panhandle of, I don't really know if it's called the panhandle, but like the little skinny part of Maryland that is squeezed in between Virginia, West Virginia, on up into Pennsylvania. There's this like little sliver, Maryland, that borders it all. And so you're driving along that little, you go across the Cumberland Gap, and then you kind of like just dogleg north, and then drive through the mountains, and boom, you're in Bear Run. And it's so cool because it's in this little area that kind of boomed into a whitewater rafting touristy spot.
Awesome.
So it's kind of interesting because it's popped up, and it's now like, you know, you've got these big, huge billboards that say, you know, rafting adventures, blah, 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 Fallingwater. You know, so it has, it's even like advertised. So it's not kind of like one of those little kind of, oh, look, you turn there and yeah, there's some weird little house over there and stuff like that. No, it actually is, it's pretty well advertised. The locals take a lot of pride in.
You know, so, you've made it when your building's on a billboard.
Exactly. Again, didn't really think about it. She just said, hey, let's go. And we went. And so when we got there, like I said, you know, we've been day trippers, and as time has gone, they've gotten to this point where our kids are we going to see something historical? Great. Are we going to do something architectural? Great. And so, you know, it's kind of leery that, okay, let's see, you know, I just paid for a trip for all three of my kids to go see a building. But I always try to figure out a way, if I'm going to go and see something that's a little bit more selfish for me, I'm going to figure out a way to make something really fun for them. And, you know, we did a little bit of hiking around the area. They've got trails and tours and stuff like that you can take through countryside on the Kaufman property. And, you know, so we do that because we love hiking. Mm-hmm. Got ready for our tour. It was kind of fun because just out of the blue, my oldest son was telling me, he's like, yeah, I've been reading a lot about Frank Lloyd Wright at the library. I'm like,
is it because of the 150?
No, he's just, I mean,
just
he didn't even, he's just into it. And
that's cool.
He started telling me about how egotistical and megalomaniac Frank Lloyd Wright was. I'm like, yeah, he kind of was. And he goes, well, how does that make you feel? He's like quizzing me. Well, how does that make you feel about architects giving you bad names? And I'm like, I don't really think he gave us a bad name. I think he gave the profession. It's like he really kind of put a spotlight on our profession that most of the time goes a little bit unheralded. He goes, well, that makes sense. So we get there, and almost immediately my wife turns around, takes a look at me, and because we've gone to a couple of the local houses that Frank Lloyd Wright's done around here. We've also been up to Oak Park in Chicago. And so she's seen a lot of Frank Lloyd Wright buildings and stuff. And she has a huge appreciation for him. And what's funny is that when she first met me, I used to always say Frank Lloyd wrong. And because you almost get tired. I don't know about you guys.
Go through your phases, yeah.
Well, we kind of get tired of it. It's just like, you know, hey, what are you going to school for? Architecture. Oh, you want to be the next Frank Lloyd Wright?
That's very true.
No, I don't want to be the next Frank Lloyd Wright. You know, I want to be the next me, or the next, you know, I want to be the next Evan Troxel.
Yeah.
But I kind of had this like love-hate relationship. I appreciated his work, but I never admitted it out loud. And then slowly but surely I started to admit, I'm like, hey, damn, this guy's good.
Mm.
And so, you know, there's a local house in Virginia, the Pope Leahy house. And we went there, and it's one of his Usonian houses. And she like absolutely loved it through knowing me. And she's gained this appreciation for mid-century modern. And even though his is like pre-mid-century modern, it still has that flavor that she really likes. You know, it's warm tones, very, you know, clean lines and things like that. And so she's always using Pope Leahy house. She's like, I want something like that, you know, something very comfortable, something kind of nice, something kind of that fits into the landscape and just feels right. And so that was kind of like the standard of what her little dream home is whenever I provide her with that dream home. And so as we're like walking through the gravel path, and we're walking down, you can hear the falls, so you know you're getting a little bit closer. And as we like turn around the corner, and you can start to see it all terracing into the landscape, she immediately turns around without even skipping a beat and anything else. She goes, "There's my new dream standard."
No pressure.
Damn it. I was like, yeah. I was like, yeah. Oh. Um, so it was great though, because like almost immediately all of the kids' reactions were almost as equally. It's like, wow, that's cool. I didn't know that they could build a house over the water like this. And it was kind of fun to see them react in a very positive way to a piece of old architecture. It doesn't feel old, especially doesn't even look old, because we still don't build that way. The day-to-day house really does not look like that. And so, we met up with our tour guide, and here's where here's where my kids gained a little bit more appreciation for their father. Is so as we're going through the tour, and this guy's telling his very scripted tour, and he did a great job, but he kept leaving. He kept telling a story, and he would stop. I guess that was, the next page, turn the page in your script and go on to the next room. And people kept, wait, can you tell me a little bit more about this? And he wouldn't. So I did.
Play him hard to get.
So it was just like, they were really kind of interested in some of these, like, well, why did he design all of the furniture? Why didn't he let the homeowners have their own furniture?
And mess up his masterpiece?
Exactly. And so, he never really, the tour guide never really filled in the blanks on some of the questions that they had. And so I kind of let it, keep going. And then, we got to a point, and when we were out on the terraces, my wife was getting really nervous about how low these terraces are, because their 6'3" son walks up to one of them, and it's not quite a guardrail, not even quite a handrail height, is at his knee. She's just like, can you back up a little bit? I'm a little nervous, because they are really low. So the tour guide was just like, can anybody tell me why they're so low? And of course, me being me, I was just like, because he could get away with it. Yeah. He didn't have modern building codes that told him that the guardrails have to be 42 inches. And he's just like, kind of stunned for a second. And he's like, well, no, it was because, and then of course I muttered under my breath to my wife as he said, well, it's because, as you're laying down in bed and you can look across without getting up, and you can just look straight across into nature. I'm like, yeah, that's nice and all, but seriously, he didn't have modern building codes. He wouldn't have been able to do this.
Wouldn't be able to today, yeah.
No, exactly. But
I think that is always kind of a shock when you see something in, an old building, and it's like, why isn't that current, right? But because it doesn't have to be, right?
Oh, it doesn't have to be. And thank goodness it doesn't. And thank goodness they don't have to update it and put, I'm sure they could put glass handrails up so that it could still kind of keep that feeling. But I'll put a picture of a guy. I took a picture when I was walking down on the paths below the house, and took a shot up, and there was a guy standing right next to it, and you could see, his kneecaps above the line of the railing or whatever. It's not even railing.
It's like a curb.
It's just, it's the curb.
Tall curb.
And you can just see him there. And my wife, we were flipping through the pictures, and my wife looked at me and said, oh, that just makes me nervous even looking at that.
Oh, geez.
So
send her rock climbing with me.
Yeah. So the one thing, though, it's kind of inherent to almost every one of us when we start walking through a building. It doesn't matter if it's the greatest masterpiece. I've done this to Calatrava. I've done this to Frank Lloyd Wright. I've done this to myself. But when you're walking through a building and you just start to see these little problems here and there, or some sacrifices, or some things that just are really out of place, of course I'm just going to sit there and kind of somewhat mutter under my breath, only audible enough for my wife to hear me. Was like, ugh, I wouldn't have done that, because look at how all of the concrete spalling and did this or that or something like that, and just now I'm starting to think, I was like, okay, well, to keep the concrete so thin, what he should have done is used epoxy coated rebar.
A little different back then, though, right?
So I'm like trying to solve all of the problems that Fallingwater has, structurally with modern technology.
Right.
And I'm just like, oh, if he would have just had this, or oh, if he would have just had that, or I mean, look at this. Look how you see how this is kind of doing that. It's because, because you can like look and see all the concrete cantilevers, and all of them, have just a slight droop to them. Yeah. And of course.
But what year is it?
It was 1934.
Yeah.
I was just, and that was
like saying if Jimi Hendrix had modern technology,
Yeah. But the great thing about it is that I stopped myself finally to just really appreciate the place.
Be there, yeah.
And then, and all I kept doing is coming back and saying, this is 1934. We don't build like this now. We don't design like this now. And it's just amazing that he had that kind of vision. And he was in his 60s when he did this. And he had that kind of vision to create this. This is kind of, was this around like his, wasn't it his like third iteration of himself? He had all of his prairie style, then Usonians, and then, this. And then later on he went out west and did all of that stuff. I mean, it's just like all these different like iterations of the Frank Lloyd Wright style. And this being kind of like, kind of mid-late career. And it was just amazing what he did. I don't know the validity of this particular story or not. I was doing a little bit of research beforehand and just reading up on it. And I've read the story before, but this was one of those kind of classic cases. And it was kind of interesting because I liken it to another masterpiece, and that was Dali's, everybody calls it the melting clocks, but it was The Persistence of Memory is the name of the painting.
I saw that.
And the story went, because I used to work at the Dali Museum in St. Pete, and the story goes is that he was commissioned to do this painting, and he had been procrastinating, and the guy who basically was kind of like his patron had come to Spain to kind of see the progress of his painting and started it. But it was a 5-hour drive from the airport to Dali's studio. And in that time, he basically started painting out his painting, which became kind of this quintessential painting that everybody likens Dali to, as these melting clocks. And he did it all within like 5 hours.
Wow.
The paint was still wet when the guy came to come look at his masterwork. And what's amazing about it is how small it really is. It's less than 8.5 by 11. It's a small little painting, but that was the story behind Fallingwater, is that, from what I was reading, is that he had taken the commission. I'm assuming was paid, or at least paid somewhat, and he had procrastinated for 9 months. And so the guy Kaufman calls him up and says, I'd like to come and see the progress on my house. Basically the drive from Pittsburgh, where, the Kaufmans lived, to Frank Lloyd Wright's studio, probably 10 hours or whatever it was. So from what I read is that he hung up the phone and frantically went into the studio and started drawing. And that one rendering that we see of Fallingwater, assuming color pencils or whatever it was, that was all done within that short time of hanging up the phone and the guy walking in the door saying, okay, show me what you got.
Yeah.
So, it's almost like we could probably have a talk about, like how procrastination aids in the architectural swift kick in the rear, or the creative process, and how procrastination fits into it, but that'll be for later.
Yeah, well, we have talked about how the subconscious kind of chews on stuff for a long time. Yeah. And to me, that's the only way I could explain it, is that that's what happened, right? He had been thinking about it and churning on it for a very long time, and that phone call kicked him into gear to actually put it on paper. But he had already figured a lot of it out. So it's a great story.
Yeah.
So what did your kids think? I mean, when you guys were sitting on a 3-hour car ride home, I mean, what were the kind of the topics that came up?
Can you give me the plug? My phone's almost dead. Or,
so not Fallingwater, is that what you're saying?
Well, we went to dinner afterwards because we did the late tour, and then we just kind of hung out there till around 6:00 is when the grounds close. And, you can kind of hang out there and go and take photographs and all of that other stuff. So it wasn't quite the Twilight tour. It was just they closed that part down, and then later you can do the little Twilight tour where you get the really dramatic shots of the lights on and all of that other stuff. But so, we kind of hung out there, and, me and my sons, we walked around talking about it. Kind of opinions. Most of it was just God, I wish we could have a house like this. That was mostly the things. Is everybody just wanted, I guess we, really, Dad, can you build us a house like this? I bet you can do a house like this. And then, of course, everyone's great was I bet you could do a better house than this. Oh, that's so nice of you.
It's very sweet of them.
You're full of it, but whatever. I wonder how many people have said, I could do a better house than this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, did you hear anybody saying oh, I could never live in something like this?
Honestly, yeah. There were a couple of people who were enamored with how amazing it was, but
it wasn't for them.
But it wasn't for them.
Yeah.
So this had to have been a bucket list. He's oh well, we're here, and we got to see this great piece of architecture, and I don't think that there was a negative view on this at all. It was just I think. Some people like a more traditional style. Sure. But for the most part, everybody that was on the tour, they were just enamored at how it was built. Now, they were also, a little taken aback at how low the ceilings were and stuff like that. And you weren't allowed to take pictures on the interior pictures. And of course, what does that mean to me? Try to see how many
kid, you're going to take pictures.
Try to see how many interior pictures you can take. You don't hear me saying that, Fallingwater people,
right?
Because I'm coming back. And I didn't take any pictures at all, really, seriously, none.
Theoretically.
They'll be in the show notes, don't worry.
Yeah. But I actually kind of wanted to take a picture of my son standing in one of the bedrooms, and he was 2 inches from his head scraping across the ceiling. And I was just dude.
It's like sitting in a car.
And actually, it's because it's that's under the beam. The way that he did those is, there's a high spot where the bed is, and it's so amazing because there was actually one, and I was standing in, and I think I told you guys about this when we were talking about the AI convention, the acoustic properties of Florida Southern College, how you could stand in one spot and the reverberations off of the building sounded normal, average, and then you step one step to the closer to the wall, and the acoustical properties are completely different, almost like an echo sound, and you're still outdoors, and it just has these weird kind of acoustical properties, and I don't know if he was very conscious of this or maybe after it was constructed, but this is the third tour that I've been at certain spaces, and I've stood in one spot, and you can hear just normal speaking, and then you take one step to the side, and it was in one of these bedrooms, and it happened in I kind of checked to see if it happened in the other bedrooms that had the same kind of condition, and it did, but you'd step literally one step to the side, less than 12 inches from, one point to another. And the acoustical properties completely change, and you can kind of feel this echo in your ears. And it's kind of crazy. So I called my son, the tall boy, over and had him stand there, and I was like, stand here, say something. And he said, something. Of course, because he's 14 and that's what 14-year-olds do, something, and then I was like, okay, take one step over. I was like, say something. Oh, that's weird. And he noticed it too, and I'm like, okay, so I'm not crazy. I actually, I do hear this. And I think it's kind of amazing because now every time I visit a Frank Lloyd Wright building, I'm looking for those kind of acoustical moments within the building that, you just don't normally get. I mean, we put acoustical ceiling tile in to damper any noise changes or anything like that. And I think in these houses that he does, it's just this weird little fun dynamic that maybe it was intentional, maybe it was completely by accident, but it's there, and now it's a part of the building. And there's even moments like that on the exterior, when you're, in a couple of different spots around the building, there's all those kind of like little acoustic changes, and it's, and it doesn't get drowned out by the sound of the falls. It just kind of almost intensifies it. Have you ever, and I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but you whistle and your friend whistles at the exact same time, and you whistle at like the same pitch, and when it hits at that same pitch, it kind of, you hear the distortion in your ears.
Yeah.
Have you ever done that?
Yep.
So it's kind of like that. There's just these weird little spots around these Frank Lloyd Wright buildings that the distortion hits at just the right second, that it kind of, you hear the distortion and the echo. And it's not like when you walk into an empty room and it feels echoey. It's not like that. It's just this weird little curving of your voice waves. It's hard to explain, but next time we go to a Frank Lloyd Wright building together, we're going to like walk around and see if we can find the weird little acoustical properties of his buildings, which is just, it's kind of cool. And I don't even know if I kind of hope that it is intentional.
That's interesting.
It's
cool that you guys got to go so close to the 150th. I mean, I was kind of reminiscing when that hit a couple weeks ago, and just thinking about back to my childhood when I used to trace Frank Lloyd Wright floor plans on like grid paper, and just kind of, like I said, reminiscing, going back and just thinking about even before I knew who Frank Lloyd Wright was, and just being kind of enamored with the plans because they were unlike anything I had ever seen. I used to love to go to, B. Dalton bookseller in the mall at the magazine rack and find a book of house plans and look through those. And then when I found some of the old Usonian houses and prairie style, and I was just looking at these things thinking, oh my God, what are these? They are so different, and I loved them. And that was just 2D. It was just a plan. There was no 3D at all. And I think, the first time that I saw that iconic image of Fallingwater that you took and that everybody takes when on the approach to the house that you talked about in the last episode, that is just kind of a mind-blowing image. And I'm sure that that's kind of when people's jaws start to drop when they get there and see that.
So just a real quick course correction on that one. That's actually not on the approach.
Oh, okay.
So when you walk up, you're actually kind of walking the front door. So all of the iconic images that you see of Fallingwater, of the falls and everything else, that's actually from the area where the Kaufmans thought Frank was going to put the house, so that they could look back at the falls and enjoy the falls. They didn't realize that he was actually going to put them right over top of the falls.
Right.
And it's kind of cool because when you're walking up, it's actually, you're walking up kind of like the driveway essentially, and this is where you kind of get to see some kind of cool terracing. There's a small little footbridge that goes over the river or over the stream, and then kind of engages the front door and all of that other stuff. And later on, there was an addition that was put in right kind of hovering above it off to the side. That was there's a small pool and small little terraces and a big master suite. And that was for guests when they came over, because it was really just a family vacation home, and it was the Kaufmans and their son. That was it. That was all they had in their family. So And like their son suite was just amazing. He, I think he actually, when he came after the parents passed, he would actually stay in the guest house rather than the main house, because there's just too many memories of the family in the house. So he was there, but not really there. And, when he moved from, the Pittsburgh area where he grew up to New York. And I think they said that he was working at the MoMA, but, that's when he decided to go ahead and donate the house. But, so you have this view that's completely different, and there'll be photos in the show notes of that. But I mean, that's the view that everybody gets, and they're always looking for that iconic kind of shot. And it's only until after you're done with the tour and you kind of start walking the grounds and you take the little footpath around and you go to the site where they, wanted to have the house. That's when you look back and you see the money shot. And, and that's when you just, as much as you're in awe of the house when you're in the house, you don't, I guess you're always like looking for, okay, well, so where's this money shot? Where's this, it is incredible. I mean, these terracing, and you look over and you see the falls, or you see the, the little rock cliffs, and you see the way that it's fully engaged into the landscape. So you see all of that, but you still are looking for that money shot. Where is that money shot at?
Well, that's the famous shot of the rendering that he did, right? I mean, it's
yes.
So he's always known that's the.
Exactly. Exactly. And so, everybody's looking for that shot. And I don't know if, everybody, because there was one of the people that were on the tour that I was talking to, they were like, oh, well, guess we're done now. I'm like, don't forget to go over to the overlook, and, because that makes the whole trip worthwhile. And he's like, oh, okay. And so as we're going over to it, because we were walking around kind of like the outside of the house, and kind of just, I was checking out details and things like that. And for some reason, my son decided to drink water that was like dripping off the side of the building. Don't ask. Don't know.
Hey.
It's 14. So anyway, so after we did that and we started walking around, they were leaving the overlook area. And they're like, you're right, it was totally worth it. Thank you for telling us. Because we were going to leave without, coming over here. I'm like, oh, thank goodness you didn't. I actually commented to my wife, I'm like, you know what? I think I want to be a docent here.
Yeah. Got to drive 6 hours a day.
No, I can move.
Yeah. Get close.
Yeah, we'll get closer. I think that I would have so much fun. I mean, I've worked in some awesome museums and just kind of like watch these docents in action, and every time I talk about things like Dali or Wright, I'm just like so filled with joy of like just talking about it and having people like listen to it. And it was just like I could have real fun just doing this. Maybe I need to go back and start teaching architectural history. Kind of love it.
I threw a link into the show notes that you guys can check out, but it's a video that a 3D artist did years ago, but it's with permission of the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation and everything, but it's basically like a building up of Fallingwater, and it's really well done. So I threw that video in there. Everybody should check it out. Yeah,
I think I've seen it, but
I'm sure it made the round big time back in the day, but it's like a 4-minute long video, and it's kind of like a fly through, but as the house kind of gets built on top of the rocks. So it starts at the site level and then builds up over time. It's really well done. And I mean, for computer graphics, kind of a thing that was done probably, 15 years ago now. I mean, it still holds up today. So, and it just kind of helps you understand the site constraints and context of how this thing was built. So I think that's really the neat thing. And then there's other links in there that kind of show you the behind the scenes of the 3D model and all the stuff that went into kind of making it. But I think it's kind of neat that he went through the process of going through the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation and getting permission and all this stuff to make something that is very well done. So it's worth checking out.
That's cool. So I will say this. There is one thing that was just very alarming. So their maintenance budget. Throw out a number.
I don't even know. I have no idea.
$1 million a year.
You said $6 million, right?
Yes, that's right. $6 million.
Pretty sure that's what I heard you say.
Yes.
Yeah, $6 million.
Oh my gosh.
Is their annual budget for maintenance? For maintenance.
I'm reading. I was reading through or glancing over some stuff when you were talking, and the house.
Paying attention.
I was paying attention.
I'm kidding.
$155,000 is what that house cost in 1936.
So that was the total budget, including the
architect's fee.
Like $8,000. $8,000.
Are you kidding me? He got $8,000 to design. Now he designed more than the house, right? Did that include the furniture and everything else he designed?
I'm sure.
Oh man.
Still though, man, guy lived high on the hog.
So there was something that I read and was told during one of my architectural history courses. So I haven't been able to find anything that substantiates this, but I'm going to tell you the story anyway.
Tell us a story, Grandpa.
So up until this time, Frank Lloyd Wright, in that this part's actually true because you can read about it, but up until this point, he had never built in reinforced concrete. I had read something, and I believe it was one of my architectural history professors that was telling a story about, even though it was a few years after the International Modern Architecture Congress that was held by Corbu and Mies and all those other people over in Europe, and they were inviting all of these world architects to, be a part of all of this, all of these different exhibitions and things like that. And they never invited Wright, and he felt extremely slighted by it. That here's people who, whether they admit it or not, or whether it's factual or not, really did benefit from taking his style, or think about who was the only person who was really doing these kind of rectilinear buildings this early on with these big, long, sweeping roofs and cantilevers and things like that. It was Frank Lloyd Wright. And then he had moved on and was doing other things. And so of the time, in the late 20s and early 30s, they were doing styles like this. And so this was the story that I was told. And again, I don't know if it's fully substantiated or not, but he basically, when he got this commission, he started to basically, he was still somewhat seething over the fact that, he had been slighted by the world architectural community, that he kind of used this as a middle finger to the rest of the world. It's like, look, I can do your style. Not only can I do your style, I can do it better than you can. And created this like gem. I mean, come on. It was, seriously, to this day, if you say, name me an architect, he's been dead for, 6 decades? However long he's been dead for.
1959 he passed away.
Okay, so 6, 7 decades that people still say Frank Lloyd Wright. Still to this day. Do they say Corb? Do they say Mies? We do, but nobody else does.
Well, it's because he's an American too, so it's contextual to where we are.
Sure, whatever. but I mean, when the the Smithsonian says that it's on the list, as it says here, it's on the list of the 28 places you should visit before you die.
Damn.
Well,
it's a bucket list place for sure.
It is totally a bucket list place, and
cool.
And this is like along the lines of like the Taj Mahal, and all of these other ones. But like, so here I'm going to read some: Mesa Verde, Pompeii, Petra, the pyramids, Machu Picchu, the Louvre. And I mean, it's like the Grand Canyon. It's all of these places, Fallingwater.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, I mean, you gotta you got to say that, holy crap, I mean, just this one little bit of architecture here that's just this modest little vacation home for department store owner.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool. It was very cool. So currently right now, since we're kind of talking the architectural adventures and everything, there currently has a 150th anniversary of his birth and all that other stuff, and I think it's called Unlocking or Opening Up the Archives or something like that, a retrospect of Frank Lloyd Wright, going on right now at MoMA through October. And we just found out that it's like really cheap. It's $25 for my wife and I to go, and it's free for the kids. So we're going to take we'll have to do a kind of a recap, but we're going to get probably in the next couple of weeks. We're going to
like a buffet.
Yeah,
all you can eat.
Kind of, and actually go like what Neil did, and finally go. I've been to New York several times, and have yet to even drive past the Guggenheim. So I've got to actually do that.
Cormac, while I was in New York, I actually went and saw the exhibit at the MoMA on Frank Lloyd Wright. Yeah, we walked through it.
Do you like it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a collection of drawings and some models, and I think there was a video playing, which the kids were waiting for us because they were a little too young to be that interested in this, so we didn't have time to sit and watch it, but it's really interesting to see a lot of the drawings because we don't really draw anymore, although all of us have, we started that way. So it's fun to see and just marvel at the penmanship and the drawing style and how they had a lot of the like sketches. So it's not all finished works or finished renderings or anything like that. A lot of it's just sketches and drawings and just really telling the story of his life through different buildings. And a lot of it were buildings that were never built, of course. So there was a lot of that in there. So yeah, it's a fun exhibit to go through and to see.
Amazing how prolific he was. I mean, I think there was over 500 built projects.
Yeah.
And then all the unbuilt stuff. Jeez.
So there was one that, and in fact, it was supposed to actually be the original spiral building. The concept for the Guggenheim didn't start with the Guggenheim. He was actually going to do this Autorama or Auto something or other. But it was at Sugarloaf Mountain where we go hiking all the time. The proposed an automobile objective. Not quite sure what that is. But it's essentially a planetarium, restaurant, and scenic overlook is what it was supposed to be. And it was called the Gordon Strong Automobile Objective, and it was the first time that he had used the spiral design. And he was actually apparently looking at it as mooring for dredgeables. Interesting.
Yeah, that would be cool.
I mean, think
Did
about
you design those too?
I bet the dredgeables probably. Yeah, knowing him, yeah. I mean, can you just imagine if like life would have been what life would have been like, or to just see all these like airships in the air, like mooring to different buildings and stuff like that. I know it didn't happen as often as they thought it was going to be, but the one for Empire State, it was too windy, so they stopped doing that. But it was kind of really cool that, the concept of it, you can almost see a very steampunk vision of like New York City with all these airships all over the place.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Neil at the last one. So taking all that in and then going back to the office, I mean, how has this affected you in what you do on a day-to-day basis, or how could you see it kind of playing out?
Well, I actually, much like what Neil was talking about, I have a project that pedestrian bridge at the campus in Pennsylvania, and there's some elevation and landscape changes that need to happen in kind of more of like a landscape intervention than just like a little pedestrian bridge. something that makes it more processional. And to see the way that Frank pulled all of this stuff together and kind of had this terracing effect that engaged the landscape rather than just kind of like obliterating it. And, he kind of worked with it and made everything as you were coming up to this building part of the processional to get to the building, and then going in, and then, being able to like engage it in kind of two different ways, engaging it as you're walking up and you just kind of like see it. And then the other one is like when you're in it. And, those are the things that I've been thinking about as part of this kind of pedestrian bridge is how do you make it kind of a different experience of seeing it, experiencing it, and then kind of like stopping on there, kind of like looking at the overlook of like the different elevations of the campus, looking back at the old campus, looking forward to the new campus and all that other stuff, and how you can be able to like really kind of pull all that stuff together and just kind of like this landscape intervention.
So has it kind of changed your thinking about, it sounds like it's changed your approach, but overall it probably is bigger than this project, I would imagine too. That
it's definitely bigger than this project, but actually really the thing about it is that I don't necessarily know specifically for this, but it has been giving me a much bigger appreciation for a guy that I spent a lot of time kind of shunning just because I was tired of having people say, "Oh, you're in architecture, you want to be the next Frank Lloyd Wright."
Yeah.
Like, you know what? As if. If I could, sure, that would be awesome. Or if I could have a prolific career like him. Or if I could at least have, a building or two that had as much impact on history as his have. That'd be great. Or I could at least strive to do something as good as this guy did. And that's what I do.
Yeah, it just seems to me like even just looking at the photos, I haven't been there. So it's one of those projects with such an impact that it makes you want to take more risks with design and try to do things that people have only dreamt about. Like you said, when you were there and there were people milling around just wanting to see it from every angle. How we could only dream about having our buildings affect people, and that's just one of the many ways that it affects people, right? So having something that sparks people's imagination and curiosity and enables them and inspires them to do what they want to do inside the spaces that the building houses would just, to create that kind of affecting change would be amazing. And we do it on some levels, but I think when you see something like this, where it's such an iconic project that, like I said, makes people's mouth kind of drop open, there's something about it that's magic. And I think that's what's so interesting about these types of projects that inspire us as architects to want to do better, want to do more.
Well, I will say this, that, one more like interesting observation that I had there. So walking around the site, sitting around waiting for our tour to start at the visitor center, and then walking around the building itself, kind of noticed that I would say maybe 30% of the people there were American, and there were so many international people there.
It's like a national
visiting
park.
It truly is, and this is like rural, backwoods Pennsylvania. And it's just amazing to see how many people will make that trek from wherever they are to go to this place and see this building. It's so very damn cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm gonna cut this one off here too, because we've gone for a while, but so the next episode, I guess I'll share my plans for my epic architectural adventures this summer, and so you guys are gonna have to wait. So yet another cliffhanger episode, 2 in a row. Keep the streak going.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah,
it's the summer tradition now.
It must be.
Yeah.
All right. So hey, before we go, we'd like to thank our episode sponsors. First, we have ARCAT. Check out all the features they offer at arcat.com. And we're also sponsored by HMC Architects. Thanks to them for their support, and to learn more or become part of their story, visit hmcarchitects.com. Remember to visit our website at archispeakpodcast.com for links to our catalog of episodes and to sign up for our newsletter, which includes links to everything we mention in the episode. And then between episodes, join the conversation on our Facebook page or on Twitter. Links to everything can be found at the main site, archispeakpodcast.com. And thanks for listening, everyone, and stay subscribed.
See ya.
Bye.
I joined the choir to sing. They're all competing for some other thing. I joined the choir to sing. I joined the choir to sing. They're all competing for some other thing. I joined the choir to sing. Join the choir to I get good love in the bank. Love blood to fill up my gas tank. I give good love in the bank. Love like to fill up my gasoline tank. I serve my nation, I need a God. Service my city with all that I've got. But when I'm running, pleasure is here. So I'm running, I'm into earn this is there. Spend time with folks at the home. How you doing? What you doing, boss? With my people, how's it going? How did you get your rock? Spend time with folks, don't know I like it automatic. With my people, how you doing? I joined the army in June. I joined the army in June. I lost my ass to please number 2. I joined the army in June. I serve my nation, I'm the God. Service my city with all that I've got. But when I'm running, pleasure is here. So I'm running to run, this is good. I serve my nation, I'm the God. Service my city with all that I've got. But when I'm running, pleasure is here. So I'm running to run, this is good.